My dear, sit here beside me for a moment. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't the kind of story people expect from an old woman drinking tea in a quiet living room. No, sweetheart. This story begins with a secret so cold, so sharp, that even today my hands tremble remembering the moment it sliced through my heart. You see this little shake in my fingers? People think it comes from age, but no, this trembling began on the day I discovered that the people I loved the most were quietly planning to erase me from the life I built. They thought I was too old, too gentle, too naive to notice. They didn't know that even in my old bones I carried steel. It started with a phone call. A simple call, the kind that should have warmed my heart. I was sitting right here in this old wooden armchair, sunlight slipping between the blinds, warming my knees. My tea was still hot. I remember the smell of cinnamon rising from it. The world felt peaceful, safe. Then my phone rang. I looked at the caller ID and smiled without even realizing it. My daughter. My only child. My girl. The one I brought into this world with pain and hope tangled together. I answered the call, expecting her bright voice, maybe a little rush of stress from her busy life. But what I heard wasn't her usual tone. It was tight, controlled, too calm. Mom, she said, I'm sending you a document. Please sign it when it arrives. You don't need to read it. It's just a formality. A formality. Such an innocent little word, isn't it? But it hit my chest like a cold gust of wind. I asked her what it was and she hesitated just for 1 second, but I heard it. I felt it. A mother knows the sound of a lie even when it hides behind love. She said, Mom, don't worry about it. It's for your own good. Just sign it and send it back. For my own good. Another phrase that should have comforted me, but instead crawled under my skin like a warning. I could hear someone whispering behind her. Maybe her husband telling her what to say. Her voice tightened. Mom, seriously, don't make this hard. Just sign it. Sweetheart. Right then it felt like the room tilted a little. Like the sunlight dimmed just slightly. I didn't accuse her. I didn't argue. I simply told her I'd look at it and hung up. But the moment my finger left the screen, the silence in the room felt different. Heavy. Suspicious. The document arrived a few minutes later, sitting in my email like a coiled snake. I opened it slowly, my heart beating too loudly for an old woman who rarely gets startled. And when I read it, oh dear, I felt something inside me break. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet, painful snap. The document would transfer my home, the home I built brick by brick with my late husband, into her name. Not temporarily. Not for protection. Permanently. And not just the house, but control over my bank accounts, my decisions, even my medical choices. It was written so cleverly, so professionally, that if I were 10 years older or 10 seconds more trusting, I might have signed it thinking it was routine like she said. My hands shook so badly I could hardly hold my phone. I called my lawyer. An old friend. A man who'd helped me through the legal mess after my husband died. When he saw the document, he didn't even try to hide the horror in his voice. Ma'am, he whispered. If you had signed this, you would have lost everything. Your house, your independence, your rights. Everything. The word echoed in my chest like a hollow drum. And sweetheart, I wish I could tell you I cried right away, but I didn't. I just sat there staring at the wall, realizing that the girl I raised, the child whose scraped knees I kissed, whose nightmares I chased away, was willing to bury me alive under the weight of her greed. I didn't sign. I didn't argue. I didn't even call her back. Instead, I did something she never expected from the old woman she thought she could manipulate. I printed the document. I signed nothing. Instead, I wrote a small amendment, one that secured my house, my finances, my legal rights, so tightly that not even a snake could slither through it. Then I sent it straight to my lawyer. Not to her. And when I hit send, I whispered to myself, let's see whose hands start trembling now. Tell me something honestly, sweetheart. If someone you love tried to take everything from you, would you confront them or walk away silently and protect your peace? Think about it for just a second. Your answer tells a lot about the kind of heart you carry. After I sent the amendment, I sat back in my chair. The room felt different. The air felt charged, as though the walls themselves knew a storm was coming. And I knew this wasn't over. My daughter would call again. Maybe with anger, maybe with sweetness, maybe with tears. But I was no longer the mother who blindly trusted. I had stepped into a role I never thought I'd need. A woman ready to defend the life she built. Before I tell you what happened next, sweetheart, if you're listening to me, if you're feeling this story somewhere deep inside your chest, then don't forget to hit that follow button. This old grandma has a whole storm left to tell you, and trust me, you don't want to miss the moment lightning strikes. Sweetheart, when I woke the next morning after sending that amendment, something inside me felt heavier than the blankets covering my legs. The world outside looked the same. Sunlight gently warming the curtains, birds singing in that soft morning way, but inside my chest, there was a storm quietly forming. I didn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing my daughter's face when she told me to just sign it. That cold calmness, that unblinking confidence. It haunted me like a shadow leaning over my bed. I made my morning tea, my hands a little unsteady. When you're older, every memory sits closer to the surface, and every betrayal cuts deeper because you have less time left to heal. As the steam from my cup curled upward, I kept wondering if I was overreacting. Maybe she really thought it was for my safety. Maybe she didn't mean harm. Maybe I was being dramatic. But then I remembered the document. The way it stripped me of everything. The way it was written like a trap disguised as protection. No, a child doesn't accidentally try to take their mother's life away on paper. I sat in my chair, letting the warmth of the cup settle into my palms, when suddenly I heard a soft knock at my door. Not urgent. Not harsh. Almost timid. For a moment I thought it might be my daughter coming to explain herself, maybe apologize. But when I opened the door, it wasn't her. It was her daughter, my sweet granddaughter Lily. She stood there with her backpack half open, her hair a little messy like she ran out without brushing it. "Grandma," she said, her voice trembling just a bit. "Can I come in?" Of course I let her. I stepped aside, and she slipped into my living room like a frightened kitten. She sat on the couch, hugging her knees, watching me carefully. "Grandma," she whispered, "Mom's really mad. She said you're being stubborn and paranoid." That word again. Paranoid. People use it when they want to make you doubt your truth. I sat down beside her, letting her rest her head on my shoulder like she used to when she was a child. I could feel her heart beating fast. Kids sense things. They know when something is wrong long before adults admit it. "Sweetheart," I asked gently, "what exactly did your mom say?" She hesitated, swallowing hard. "She said you're refusing to sign something important, and that you're making things difficult on purpose. She said you're not thinking clearly." Thinking clearly. Another pretty phrase used when someone wants to take away your voice. I didn't want to drag Lily into this mess, but those big, worried eyes of hers, they begged me for honesty, and she deserved it. So I took a deep breath and told her everything, slowly, carefully, like unwrapping a painful memory. I told her about the phone call, the strange tone, the document disguised as routine, the truth my lawyer discovered, the house, the accounts, my rights. As I spoke, I watched her expression shift from confusion to anger, to a kind of fear I had never seen in her before. "Grandma," she whispered, "Mom told me it was just a medical form. She lied to me too." Those words sliced through me sharper than any knife. She didn't only deceive me. She pulled her own child into her web. I placed my wrinkled hand over hers. "Sweetheart, none of this is your fault." But she shook her head. "Grandma, you don't understand. Mom said she needs that house because she and Dad made plans. I don't know what that means, but..." She sounded desperate. Plans. Another word that felt like a cold hand pressing on my back. I didn't react. I didn't want to frighten her. Instead, I held her closer, letting her feel the steadiness in my breath even though my heart was spinning. She stayed for about an hour. We talked. We sat quietly. I stroked her hair, trying to take away the tension written all over her young shoulders. When she finally stood up to leave, she hugged me tighter than she ever had, whispering, "Grandma, I won't let anyone hurt you. Not even Mom." Those words warmed something lonely inside me, but also broke something else. No child should ever have to choose between the people they love. When she left, I closed the door slowly, leaning against it for a moment. The quiet of the house pressed into my ears, thick and heavy. I walked back to my chair and sat down, staring out the window, the world suddenly too still. "And sweetheart, I want to ask you something right here, right now. A real question. The kind that digs under your ribs a little. If someone you love lies to you once, do you forgive them instantly? Or do you start watching their actions more carefully? I want you to really think about it. People often answer with their hearts, not their minds. I didn't have much time to think about my own answer, because only an hour later my daughter called again. Her voice was colder than yesterday, clipped like she was slicing each word before speaking it. "Mom," she said sharply, "did you get the document?" "I did." "Did you sign it?" "No." Silence. So deep I could hear her breathing. "Mom, why are you being like this?" she snapped. "Why can't you just do what needs to be done?" Her choice of words was interesting. Do what needs to be done, not what's right. Not what's safe. What she wanted. "Honey," I said softly, "why didn't you tell me the truth? Why didn't you explain the document?" She paused. Too long. Moments stretched like strings pulled tight. Then she said, calm as ice, "Because you wouldn't have agreed." Sweetheart, when somebody tells you they hid the truth because you wouldn't have agreed, that means they already decided to betray you long before you even knew something was happening. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "Why do you need my house?" She took a breath. I heard papers shuffling in the background. I heard her husband whispering something. Finally she said, "It doesn't matter. Just sign it. Stop being stubborn. You're making everything harder." Another phrase manipulative people like to use, making everything harder. As if their actions don't already crush you. "I can't sign something so important without understanding it," I told her. Her tone snapped like a branch. "Mom, you're old. You don't understand these things anymore. We're trying to help you." Old. The word sat in my ear like a slap. When she hung up without saying another word, I stared at my phone for a long time, feeling the betrayal settling deeper into my bones. Not long after, my lawyer called again, his voice grave. "Ma'am, I looked deeper. If you had signed, they wouldn't just get your home. They'd have access to your medical decisions too, meaning they could choose anything." I felt the blood drain from my face. Anything. Procedures. Treatments. End-of-life decisions. They wanted complete control. I hung up the phone and set it gently on my lap. "Sweetheart." That was the moment I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't family stress. This was a plan. A plan to erase my independence and bury me under their version of care. And I knew then, the storm wasn't coming anymore. It had already arrived. "Sweetheart, before I begin, come a little closer, because this part of the story still sends a cold shiver crawling up my spine. You know, people think the worst pain comes from strangers, but no. It's the familiar voices, the ones you trust, that can break you in ways nothing else can." And that evening, when I sat alone in my quiet house after that phone call, the shadows in my living room felt heavier, almost like they knew something I didn't. Something waiting just beyond the edges of my understanding. After my daughter hung up on me, I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there in the dim glow of my old lamp, listening to the tick-tick-tick of the clock, every sound echoing like a countdown to something I couldn't see but could feel. The air felt tight. My tea had gone cold. And somewhere deep inside me, a truth I didn't want to face was beginning to form like a storm cloud. My daughter, the child I raised with worn hands and a stitched-together heart, wasn't just pressuring me. She was planning something. I tried to distract myself. I folded laundry. I rearranged a bookshelf. I dusted the same shelf 3 times. But the dread wouldn't leave me. It clung to the walls. It seeped into the carpet. It sat heavy on my shoulders like a silent visitor who refused to leave. Around dinner time, the phone rang again. My heart jumped. Maybe it was Lily. Maybe she wanted to check on me. Maybe. But when I looked at the screen, my stomach dropped. It was my son-in-law. I almost didn't answer. I stared at the screen, feeling a mix of resentment and fear. But eventually, I swiped to accept. "Hello," I said quietly. His voice came through sharp, like a blade scraping against metal. "We need to talk." We. Not even your daughter and I. Just we, like they had merged into a single force. Before I could speak, he continued. "You're making this much harder than it needs to be. The sooner you sign that paper, the better." I took a breath, slow, steady. "Why do you need my house?" He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Because you're old and you can't live alone much longer. You should be grateful we're stepping in before things get worse. Grateful. Oh, sweetheart. The way that word slithered into my ear made my skin crawl. I spoke softly, calmly. Because when someone tries to intimidate you, silence and control are more powerful than shouting. I appreciate your concern, I lied. But I'm fully capable. That's the problem, he snapped. You think you are. Something inside me, something deep, protective, ancient, rose up like fire in my chest. The tone he used wasn't the tone of a man helping family. It was the tone of a man who felt entitled to ownership, power, control. And then he said something that still echoes in my memory like a ghost whispering against cold glass. You don't want to end up somewhere you don't choose, do you? Because if you keep refusing, we'll have to make decisions without your cooperation. Sweetheart, my blood turned to ice. That wasn't a threat hidden in polite words. That was a threat spoken openly. Somewhere I don't choose. Somewhere like a nursing home. I knew what he meant. Sign the paper. Or lose everything anyway. My voice shook, but I didn't let it break. This is my home. I built it with my hands. You don't get to decide what happens to it. His tone hardened. We'll see. And then he hung up. No goodbye. No civility. Just a click sharp enough to slice through my last thread of denial. I sat in my chair, my breath trembling, my knees weak. For the first time in a long, long while, I felt truly unsafe. Not because of criminals. Not because of strangers. But because of the people whose photos sit framed on my shelves. I looked around the room slowly, my heart aching as my eyes landed on old memories. My wedding picture. My daughter's first day of school. Lily playing in the yard when she was 5. And suddenly, the warmth of those memories collided with the cold reality of what was happening. A betrayal so deep it felt like it reached inside my chest and grabbed hold of my heart with icy fingers. I pressed my hand against that ache, trying to steady myself. But that evening, something inside me shifted. A line broke. A boundary snapped. And I realized something every elder learns eventually. Sometimes the people you raise grow into shadows you never saw forming. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't cook dinner. I just sat there, staring into the quiet, letting the weight of everything settle around me. And sweetheart, let me ask you something. A real question, one that reveals who you are inside. If someone threatened to take your freedom, even if they were family, would you stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you fight back even if it hurts? Think about it. Your answer matters. I must have sat in that silence for almost an hour before my lawyer called again. Ma'am, he said, his voice low but firm, I did more research after you told me about their reaction. I think you should come to my office tomorrow. There's something else you need to see. Something else. 2 words a person never wants to hear when betrayal is already sitting on their doorstep. I asked him what he found, but he refused to tell me over the phone. It's better in person, he said. Better. Nothing about this was better. I agreed to meet him in the morning and hung up. But the night, oh sweetheart, that night was long. The house creaked more than usual. Every shadow seemed to lean toward me. Every sound made my heart jump. I kept seeing my son-in-law's words replaying in my head. You don't want to end up somewhere you don't choose. It was around midnight when something else happened. Something small, but enough to tighten the dread around my throat. A car I didn't recognize slowed down in front of my house. It didn't stop. It didn't park. It just moved slowly, like someone was watching, checking, waiting. I turned off my lights and peeked through the curtain. The car lingered, then drove away. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. I barely slept. By morning, when I finally stepped outside to leave for my lawyer's office, the cold air hit me like a slap. I clutched my coat, locked my door, and as I walked down the steps, I noticed something sitting near my mailbox. A folded piece of paper. First I thought it was junk, but when I picked it up, my stomach twisted. It had no name on it, no address, just a single handwritten sentence. It's not too late to sign. Sweetheart. I froze right there on my front steps. The world tilted just a little. My knees almost buckled. Someone had been here. Someone had approached my home. Someone had left a message meant to scare me. I looked around the street, quiet, normal, peaceful. Yet suddenly it felt like the whole neighborhood was watching. I didn't go back inside. I didn't tear the note. I didn't cry. I only whispered one thing to myself. They don't know who they're dealing with. Then I put the note in my pocket, straightened my back, and climbed into my car. Because, sweetheart, if they wanted a fight, they were about to meet a grandmother who had nothing left to lose. I don't know what kind of strength carried me through that night, sweetheart. Maybe it was the kind that only rises when your heart has been broken too many times. Maybe it was the kind a woman discovers when she realizes silence is just another kind of surrender, and she's done surrendering. But when I opened my eyes the next morning, the house felt colder than it had in years, as if every memory inside these walls was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. I brushed my fingers across the picture frames lined on the hallway shelf, my husband smiling with his lopsided grin, my son at age 10 holding a toy airplane, and even a photo of the grandchildren who hadn't bothered calling me in nearly a year. And would you believe it? Even though those pictures stayed still, I swear I could feel them watching me, wondering if I would finally stand up for myself. That morning I sat at the kitchen table with my old notebook, the one where I wrote every birthday I never got invited to, every holiday meal I cooked alone, every insult I swallowed so my family wouldn't fall apart. And as I flipped through its worn pages, a thought crept into my mind. A quiet one but sharp. If I don't tell them the truth now, I never will. Before I continue, let me ask you something, my dear. And answer in your heart honestly. Have you ever loved people so deeply that you forgot to save even a little piece of yourself for you? Because that was me. My love had no edges, no protection. And they took from it until there was almost nothing left. I felt a sting behind my eyes, and for a moment I wasn't an old woman. I was just a mother who wanted to be seen. A grandmother who wanted to matter. A human being who wanted to be more than a burden whenever the family felt like remembering her. I closed my notebook and opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue, asking for a password, and my hands trembled so badly I mistyped it 3 times. Not because I was scared of technology, no. I was scared because what I was about to do would change everything. It wasn't just a choice. It was a line that once crossed could never be uncrossed. When the documents opened, I scrolled through the agreements I had signed over the years. The house I had transferred to my son temporarily. The bank accounts I let him manage, because it's easier this way, Mom. The medical forms where my own decisions were pushed aside for your safety. Do you see the pattern? They wrapped control in the disguise of love. And I let them. A soft knock echoed on the front door, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was my neighbor, little Jenny, the girl who always brought me cookies when she baked with her mother. She couldn't have been more than 11. She handed me a small paper bag and said, "Mom said these might make you smile today." Then she leaned close and whispered, "You looked sad yesterday." Oh, sweetheart. Those simple words cracked something inside me. It wasn't my son, not my daughter-in-law. Not anyone from my own bloodline who noticed my sadness. It was a child who didn't owe me anything. I hugged her tight, and for a moment the world felt bearable. After she left, I sat back down and stared at the documents. Maybe they didn't expect me to read them. Maybe they thought old eyes couldn't see, old minds couldn't think, old hearts couldn't resist. But let me tell you something, darling, age may wrinkle the skin, but betrayal wrinkles the soul, and mine had been wrinkled enough. So I picked up the phone, and I dialed the number I never thought I'd need. My lawyer. The moment he answered, his voice calm and steady, something in me loosened. I told him everything, every detail, every lie, every humiliation. First he was silent, completely silent. And then he exhaled slowly and said, "You should have called me a long time ago." His words didn't scold me. They freed me. We talked for nearly an hour. And with each sentence, I felt myself lifting out of a pit I didn't even realize I had fallen into. He explained my rights, the options, the documents that had been twisted against me. And when he said, "We can reclaim it all," I felt a strength rush into my bones like warm sunlight. After the call ended, I didn't just sit there, I stood. For the first time in years I stood tall. My knees shook, but my resolve didn't. And then I heard a sound at my gate, my son's car pulling up. My heart stopped. He walked inside like always, without knocking, without asking, as if every inch of my home belonged to him because the paper said so. He glanced around the living room and squinted at me, noticing the open laptop, the documents spread out on the table. "Mom, what are you doing?" He said it with that tone. the tone that meant you're not supposed to think for yourself. I smiled. Softly. Calmly. A smile I had never used before. Oh, nothing special, I said. Just remembering things. He walked closer, grabbed one of the papers and froze. I could see the blood drain from his face. He knew exactly what those documents meant. He knew what they implied. And he knew what they could undo. His voice sharpened. Where did you get these? I never lost them, I replied. He inhaled sharply, and fear flickered in his eyes. Not fear for me, fear of what he had done coming back to him. Then he said something so low, so cold that it almost broke me again. Mom, you don't need a lawyer. I looked into his eyes, and for the first time I didn't see my son. I saw a man who underestimated me. My dear, I whispered softly. I already talked to him. The room went silent. Not the peaceful kind. The dangerous kind, like the air before a storm breaks the sky open. He stepped back, stunned, and I watched a nervous tremble twitch at the corner of his mouth. And then, I turned my back to him, walked toward my phone and tapped the screen. A message already written. Already addressed. Already prepared. Mom, what are you doing? He asked again, voice shaky now. I pressed send. Not the amendment you think, oh no. Not yet. But something far more terrifying for a man who lived off of my silence. A simple document requesting a full audit. Of everything he controlled. Everything he touched. Everything he thought belonged to him. I didn't need anger. I didn't need revenge. I only needed the truth and the law and a little bit of courage. And that was the moment his entire expression cracked. That, my dear, was the moment he realized the mother he controlled for years wasn't controllable anymore. Do you know what it feels like when the room suddenly becomes too small for the truth that has finally woken up inside you? I felt that, sweetheart, the moment my son's face twisted with fear. The kind of fear a person shows when their comfort is threatened. When the person they underestimated turns into someone they can no longer control. I watched him stare at the phone in my hand as if it were a ticking bomb, and in a way it was the kind where every second chipped away at the power he thought he had over me. He tried to speak, but his throat must have tightened because all that came out was a half-broken sound, something between a sigh and a warning. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The silence between us carried a weight that neither of us could escape. He finally managed, Mom, you're making this harder than it needs to be. That sentence. Oh my dear, that sentence sliced right through me. Harder. For whom? For him. For the man who drained me little by little under the name of responsibility, who made decisions for me as if my age canceled my right to exist. I inhaled slowly and turned toward him, not with anger, no, anger is too loud. I turned with a calmness that shook him more than any rage could. I'm not making anything harder, I said softly. I'm simply choosing myself. He blinked as if the words didn't fit the version of me he had built. He wasn't used to hearing me speak like that. I had spent years cushioning my words, softening them, swallowing them whenever they threatened to grow a backbone. But something inside me had changed, something too heavy to push back down. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You could have talked to me. We could have handled this privately. Privately, I repeated. You mean silently? His jaw tightened. But I didn't flinch. Let me ask you something, sweetheart. Just between you and me, have you ever realized only too late that the person you trusted the most had been counting on your silence all along? Because that realization, it can turn your knees to water. He walked toward the table, glancing at the scattered documents, and when he picked one up, his hand trembled. I didn't miss it. That tremble told me everything. He wasn't confused. He wasn't concerned. He was guilty. He looked up at me, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. What did your lawyer tell you? That I'm not as helpless as you want me to believe, I replied. His eyes widened, not because of what I said, but because of what it meant. It meant the foundation he built under my feet was cracking. It meant he no longer held the reins. He opened his mouth to object, but before he could, I raised a hand, just like a mother does when she needs her child to listen. Sit down, I whispered. He didn't move at first, but then he obeyed. Not because he respected me, but because for the first time he didn't know what else to do. I sat across from him and placed my palms on the table. The wood felt warm beneath my skin, as if the house itself was relieved I had finally spoken up. For a long moment, Neither of us said anything. The old clock on the wall ticked louder and louder, like a heartbeat growing more anxious. Finally, I broke the silence. "You've been managing my accounts for 4 years," I said. "Yes," he replied quickly, "because you asked me. I asked you to help, not to take." His breath caught. He wasn't expecting my words to be so sharp. "You signed everything," he muttered, "because you told me it was temporary." He swallowed hard and looked away. Guilt was creeping across his face like a shadow. "And this house," I continued softly, "you said we'd put it under your name only for tax benefits." "It was for you," he insisted. "For your security." "My security doesn't look like losing my rights," I whispered. His knee bounced under the table. His fingers tapped against the wood. He looked trapped, and for the first time I didn't feel sorry. "You know what the strange thing is, sweetheart? There was still love inside me. So much love that it almost hurt. But love without respect becomes a rope. One someone else can pull tighter and tighter until you can't breathe." I realized that morning I wasn't ready to stop loving him, but I was finally ready to stop suffocating. He leaned back and tried another tactic, one I knew too well: softness. His voice dropped, warm and gentle, the way he spoke when he wanted something. "Mom, you don't need to go through all this trouble. I'll fix everything. I promise." That word, promise. I almost laughed. How many times had I swallowed that word? How many times had I believed it? "No," I said. "This time I will fix it." The shock that crossed his face. Oh, darling, I wish you could have seen it. It was like watching a wall crumble. He stood abruptly, pacing the room. "This will ruin everything, Mom. Do you understand that?" "Everything?" I asked. "Or just everything you gained from me?" He froze mid-step. His silence was my answer. At that moment, something warm spread through my chest. Not comfort, not peace, but strength. A strength I hadn't felt in decades. I felt taller, lighter, as if the weight I had carried all these years had finally begun to melt away. "Mom, please," he whispered, voice cracking now. "We can work this out. Just don't bring outsiders into this." "You mean the lawyer?" I asked softly. "Or the auditor?" His lips parted, and a tremor passed through him. He hadn't expected that. He hadn't expected me to take action. "But do you know what, sweetheart?" He still didn't understand. He still thought I was bluffing, that I was scared that I would eventually fold the way I always had. He didn't know I had already signed the request. He didn't know it had already been processed. He didn't know the wheels were already turning. "I'm not trying to hurt you," I said quietly. "I'm trying to reclaim myself." He stared at me with an expression I had never seen on him before. Not anger, not disappointment, but fear mixed with disbelief. "Mom, why are you doing this?" I stood slowly, slid my chair back and walked toward the window. Outside, the sunlight hit the garden just right, making the roses glow with a soft golden blush. For a moment, I let the light warm my face. "Because," I whispered, turning back to him, "you stopped seeing me as your mother, and started seeing me as your possession." He stumbled back a step, and then his phone buzzed. He looked at it. His face drained of color. Completely. The message arrived faster than expected. He didn't read it aloud. He didn't have to. I saw everything in his eyes. The panic, the dread, the realization that everything he tried to bury was already beginning to surface. And sweetheart, that was only the beginning. You should have seen his face, sweetheart. The way all the color drained from it when that message buzzed through. His shoulders tensed, his hand shook, and for the first time in years, he looked like a boy again, caught, cornered, exposed. He stared at the screen as if it were announcing the end of something he had built on top of me, and in a way it was. He swallowed hard, eyes flicking toward me. "Mom, did you really send the request?" I didn't answer right away. Silence, I learned that morning, can be sharper than any blade. I walked past him, slow, steady, my slippers brushing against the old wooden floor that had carried our memories for 3 decades. When I reached the table, I took my glasses off and set them down carefully. Then I lifted my chin and looked him in the eyes, the way a mother looks when she knows she has nothing left to lose. "Yes," I whispered. "I did." He froze. His mouth parted. His breath caught in his throat, and I felt something strange, relief. A soft, warm relief that filled the space around my heart like sunlight seeping into a room that had been dark too long. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing in small, frantic steps. "You don't understand what you've started." I tilted my head. "No, you don't understand what you ended." Those words hit him harder than anything else I'd said. He stopped pacing. His back stiffened. His hands curled at his sides, not in anger but in fear. "Let me ask you something, sweetheart. Isn't it strange how people who take advantage of your kindness suddenly panic when you finally stand up?" 'Cause that's exactly what I saw. And oh, how it shook him. He walked toward me slowly, lowering his voice the way people do when they're afraid of losing control. "Mom, listen to me. This is going to cause problems. Serious problems. For me, for the family, for everyone involved. For everyone who used me?" I asked softly. He flinched. "I never used you," he muttered. "You benefited from my silence," I replied. His jaw tightened. He had no comeback for that, and he knew it. He sat down heavily in the chair across from me, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. I watched his shoulders shake with silent breaths, panicked breaths, not sadness. The guilt he carried didn't come from hurting me. It came from being caught. A part of me throbbed with pain. I didn't want to see my son like this. I didn't want our relationship to reach such a bitter place. But I also knew that loving someone does not mean letting them walk all over you. Sometimes love means drawing a line. Sometimes love means saying enough. He finally lifted his head. His eyes were glossy, not from tears but from shock. "Mom, why didn't you just talk to me first?" "I did," I said quietly. "For years. You just never listened." He opened his mouth as if to argue, but no sound came out. "You know, sweetheart, age teaches you many things: patience, resilience, forgiveness. But the one thing I never learned until now is how to protect myself from the people I loved most. I never thought I'd need to. I never imagined a day when my own son would become someone I had to defend myself against." He stood again, this time slower, heavier, and walked toward the window. The afternoon sun cast a golden outline around him, but it couldn't soften the tension in his shoulders. "What happens now?" he asked finally, without turning around. "Now," I said softly, "the truth begins." He let out a bitter laugh that didn't sound like him at all. "The truth? You think you know everything?" "No," I answered. "But I know enough." He turned sharply. "You're making a mistake." "Then let it be mine," I said. He shook his head, pacing again. "Do you realize what an audit will uncover? Do you understand the complications it will bring?" "I understand what it will restore," I said. "Me." He stopped dead. He hadn't expected that. I could tell by the way his eyes widened a little, the way his lips parted as if he had forgotten how to breathe. The room went quiet. A deep, eerie quiet. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Not as the mother he could manipulate, but as a woman with her own voice. And that terrified him more than any document I could ever send. After a long moment he asked, "Did the lawyer tell you to do this?" I shook my head. "No. He showed me my options. I made the choice." He looked down at the floor, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw something like regret flicker through him. But it vanished as quickly as it came. Then he said something that chilled me to my bones. "You're going to ruin us, Mom." And I replied, "You ruined this when you underestimated me." For a few seconds he just stared at me. No words, no excuses, no lies left to hide behind. And then slowly, stiffly, he walked toward the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. Didn't look back at me. Didn't apologize. Didn't explain. He just whispered, "This isn't over." And then he left. The moment the door closed, the house fell silent again. But not the suffocating silence I had grown used to. This one felt new. A silence born from change. From truth. From courage. My knees trembled and I finally let myself sit. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling my heartbeat thundering like a distant storm. It was overwhelming, yes, but freeing. Like breathing fresh air after years in a sealed room. I sat there for a long time, staring at the door he had just walked through, and I wondered, had I lost him forever? Had I pushed too far? Had I made myself an enemy in my own family? But then I remembered something my lawyer said. Sometimes you must risk losing people to stop losing yourself. I leaned back, exhaled and let that truth settle inside me. Then just as I picked my glasses up again, my phone buzzed. Not once. Not twice. 3 times. I looked down. 3 names. 3 messages. And every single one. From someone in my family. My son. My daughter-in-law. And my eldest granddaughter. All 3. Texting me at the same time. I had no idea what those messages held. But sweetheart, whatever came next, I knew it was going to change everything. When those 3 messages lit up my phone, my heart thumped so loudly I could hear it echo in my ears. I stared at the screen for a moment that felt like a lifetime. It was strange how years could pass without a word from them, yet suddenly in the span of seconds they all remembered me at once. My fingers hovered above the screen, trembling slightly, not from fear, but from something deeper, anticipation. A storm was waiting behind those messages, and I knew I couldn't avoid it anymore. I opened the first one, my granddaughter. Grandma, is everything okay? Dad's acting weird. A small ache tugged at my heart. She was the only one who ever tried to check on me, even if she was inconsistent. I typed a simple reply. I'm all right, sweetheart. Don't worry. But before I could hit send, another message popped up from her. He said something big is happening. Are you sick? Did something happen to the house? The house. Of course. They never asked about my heart. Just the property. I took a long breath and opened the second message. My daughter-in-law. We need to talk. Immediately. You're making a mess you don't understand. A mess. Not a concern. Not a question. A complaint. Her words were always knives, wrapped in politeness when others were watching, but sharp when we were alone. Even reading her text felt like being pushed into a corner again. And then the third message. My son. Mom. Come to the house tonight. We need to discuss this as a family. As a family. Funny how the word only appeared when they needed to protect themselves. I stared at those messages, feeling the weight of all the years I'd been quiet, all the times I stayed small so they could feel big. But something inside me had changed. I wasn't the same woman I was even yesterday. I won't lie to you, darling. A part of me wanted to say yes. A part of me wanted to step back, lower my head, and let the old pattern return. Because that's what love does. It pulls you back even when you know better. But then I remembered the look in my son's eyes earlier. The fear. Not for me, never for me. For himself. And that memory lifted my chin. I locked my phone, stood up, and walked to the kitchen sink. I ran cold water over my hands, letting it steady me. The chill grounded me, reminded me that I was still here. Still breathing. Still capable of fighting for myself. After a moment, I dried my hands and opened my phone again. I typed a single reply to my son. I'm not coming tonight. If you want to talk, come here. But I won't be alone. I added one more line before sending it. My lawyer will be present. And with one tap, I sent it. You should have seen how fast he responded. Within seconds. Mom, don't do this. But it was too late. I placed the phone face down and sat in my armchair. The afternoon light dimmed slowly as evening crawled in, painting the walls golden, then orange, then a soft purple. Time moved strangely, slow and fast all at once. Around 8 o'clock, headlights lit up my driveway. My breath caught. One car. Then another. They all came. My son. My daughter-in-law. My granddaughter. All 3 stepping out, faces tight with tension. I stood. My knees ached, but they didn't waver. When I opened the door, my daughter-in-law didn't even bother with a greeting. She marched in first, eyes flashing like cold steel. What have you done? My son followed, avoiding eye contact, jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. My granddaughter lingered by the door, uncertain, her teenage eyes flicking between all of us. Sit, I said softly. My daughter-in-law scoffed but obeyed. My son sank heavily into the chair. My granddaughter sat beside him, hands folded tightly in her lap. I sat across from them, steady, calm. My daughter-in-law spoke first, leaning forward sharply. This audit request, you need to cancel it. Immediately. No, I replied. Her eyes widened, indignation rising like heat. You don't understand how this will affect all of us. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said. It'll reveal the truth. She opened her mouth, probably to attack me again, but my son lifted a hand to stop her. He finally spoke. Mom, please. We can handle this privately. You mean hide it privately? I corrected. He winced. My granddaughter looked confused. What's going on? Why are you all talking like this? Her innocence, her confusion, it cracked my heart a little. So I turned to her gently. Sweetheart, I said softly, sometimes adults make choices they shouldn't. And sometimes, they forget that the people who love them also have limits. My daughter-in-law let out an impatient breath. Oh, for God's sake. But I cut her off. Don't use that tone with me. Not in my home. She froze. She wasn't expecting that. My son leaned forward, desperation creeping into his voice. Mom, tell me what you want. Money? Control? What is this really about? I blinked slowly. What I want. What I want. I swallowed the lump in my throat and whispered. I want to be treated like a human being. I want respect. I want honesty. And I want my life back. My son's face softened just a fraction. My daughter-in-law opened her mouth again, but before she could say anything, my granddaughter suddenly stood. Dad, she said quietly, did you take advantage of Grandma? The room fell utterly silent. My son stared at her as if she'd spoken in another language. My daughter-in-law's face paled. And my heart? Oh, my poor heart. It twisted in my chest. My granddaughter stepped closer to me, her voice trembling. Is that why you never come to our house anymore, Grandma? Is that why you always look sad? Tears burned my eyes. I reached for her hand, squeezing gently. Sweetheart, I just didn't want you to see me hurting. She swallowed, her chin trembling. I'm here now. Those 3 words. I felt them deep in my bones. My daughter-in-law shot up from her chair. This is ridiculous. You're twisting everything. No, I said firmly. You twisted everything. You controlled my documents. You controlled my access. You controlled my decisions. That ends now. My son closed his eyes as if the weight of everything was finally sinking in. And then, quietly, barely above a whisper, he said, Mom, I'm sorry. The words were soft, honest, shaking. My daughter-in-law stared at him, stunned. What are you doing? But he just shook his head. I messed up. My granddaughter stepped beside him and touched his shoulder. He didn't move away. And for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel weak. I didn't feel like a burden. I felt hurt. My son looked at me with wet eyes. Let me make it right. I nodded softly. We'll do it together. Honestly. Transparently. No more secrets. He nodded. My daughter-in-law opened her mouth again, but my son stopped her this time. No. We're fixing this the right way. Her face twisted with frustration, but she stayed silent. My granddaughter hugged me tight, warm, real. And I closed my eyes, letting myself melt into her embrace. Because after all the silence, all the shadows, all the years of being overlooked, that hug felt like sunlight, felt like healing, felt like a new beginning. As they left that night, my son squeezed my hand, my granddaughter promised to visit the next day, and my daughter-in-law said nothing at all. And when the door closed behind them, I sat in my armchair, hands resting gently in my lap, heart beating steady and strong. And I whispered to myself, you did it. Not revenge. Not punishment. Just truth. Just courage. Just finally choosing myself. And oh, sweetheart, what a feeling that is.